It's the journey of finding out these amazing substances that we now put into MANNA was one of kind of self-discovery, if you will. And now the three main active ingredients that we've found that we put in these little sachets, we're just so passionate about them because we know the effect that they have on the human biology at the cellular level and potentially even our genetics, our biochemistry and our bioenergy field.
Gentlemen, welcome to Austin. Excited to have you guys on the podcast. It's gonna be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
awesome.
Looking
Thanks for
forward to
having
it.
us.
Yeah, we're excited to have you guys on because we have a few mutual friends, and you guys come highly recommended from people like Austin, Floyd, and Khalil. So excited to dive into the founder story of MANNA, understand a little bit more about what you guys are up to. But yeah, the recommendations that we got from the people that we respect most in the industry are just like through the roof. So excited for this combo.
Thanks, brother.
We're swiveling mics back and forth here, so though there might be a second delay, but we were talking a little bit. I was talking to both of you guys, both you, David, and you, Brad, how it seems like CPG is becoming this space where a founder identifies like a good opportunity that could be really profitable, and then you just quickly find a manufacturer, get a couple R&D samples in, and then you're off to the races. You're just trying to get to that finish line as quick as possible. And I feel like what you guys are doing at MANNA is the antithesis of that. And what attracted us to you, outside of the product being incredible, we've used it for the last year. It's truly an unbelievable product. The 10-year journey that you both have been on individually and together, like it literally started in 2011, right? So I think that would be an amazing opportunity for the audience to learn a little bit more about you guys, like just detailing some of those steps of that 10-year journey and how you went from 0 to 1 over the last decade.
Yeah, it's a good question. Brad and I were living together back in 2011. And I mean, the journey really started a long time before that. However, I guess 2011 was a catalyst for where we are now with MANNA. And some of it was reading sacred text and also books on how to manifest, which kind of taps into that spiritual realm as well. We spoke about it a little bit just before, books like Think and Grow Rich and The Secret and The Science of Getting Rich. And those books for me are really misinterpreted. What I mean by that is like Think and Grow Rich, you'd think it's all about making money, but it's really about how to manifest. And how to manifest is actually going pretty deep inside yourself and looking pretty deep at the truth of who we are. So that kind of really, at the time I was working for Stryker, a big American orthopedic company, and doing really well, being really successful. However, it made me realize that there's the opportunity to do much more and to create much more abundance and do things my own way, effectively. So Brad and I were inspiring each other a lot through that next 12 months, actually, while we were living together in Brisbane. And then, I quit my job, kind of went on a spiritual journey, or also an entrepreneurial journey to find out what I was most passionate about, because I also had some good mentors at the time saying, just find out what you love and then just do that for the rest of your life, and then it's like never working again. So that sounded pretty attractive at the time. It took me much longer than I thought to find that. However, that journey to find out what I was most passionate about was probably the greatest gift I've ever given myself, actually. It's the journey of finding out these amazing substances that we now put into MANNA was one of kind of self-discovery, if you will. And now the three main active ingredients that we've found that we put in these little sachets, we're just so passionate about them because we know the effect that they have on the human biology at the cellular level and potentially even our genetics, our biochemistry and our bioenergy field, which is something we can dive into if you guys want. But that founder's story, it's a big journey. As you guys know, and we've just got so much respect catching up with other founders because there's so much involved in not only creating a product, but then having the operational side of a business and promoting it and all of the different aspects that Brad and I look after. So I know we've known each other for almost 30 years.
Wow.
We met when we were teenagers.
Yeah. That's a superpower.
Yeah.
Totally.
So we're super close. It's like nothing can come between us, but there's just that beautiful trust, loyalty and respect. Brad still inspires me every single day with things that's happening at MANNA. We work for MANNA and with MANNA, like literally from the moment we wake up till the moment we go to bed, every single day. So it's heaps of fun. We're obsessed with it. And I think that comes through in the product and the detail of the product and everything about it, to be honest.
One of the things that we have in common is Brett and I have lived together for the past 2 years as the foundation of our founder's story. Has that helped you guys? I think there's some layers of like relationships that you don't really see unless you're like living with a person, and then you start a business with somebody, and like knowing just like how each other operate like outside of just a work setting is, I think, an incredibly powerful thing. Like people think about entrepreneurship and they think you're just starting a business, but so much of it is just like internal work on yourself. So I'm curious, like, have you guys seen the benefits of that through your relationship?
Yeah, I think we were talking about it earlier. Like, I think like starting a business or being a founder is like the best personal development process you can ever go through, because you're not only learning a lot of things about yourself, you're also learning, to your point, learning things about, you know, your partners or people inside of your business and your team. So I think getting a really good understanding of like my responsibility on how I act is really crucial as well too. So we always have a lot of freedom in what we do. And I think we were talking about it earlier, like, you know, find out what you're good at and just go all in on that. And, you know, everyone's got that inside of themselves. And Dave does a great job in doing that as well, is giving from a leadership point of view, like the way he's developed the products and, you know, the building aspect of MANNA and sort of the sales and marketing aspect of what I do. So finding out what you're both really, really good at and going all in on that and really respecting each other and always putting the other person first. And I find, because we travel with each other a lot, and I talked about it the other day, it's like if you put the other person first when you're traveling together is a really good example. It sort of makes things really, really seamless. And we try and do that in a daily aspect as well. So, you know, we probably spend 2 or 3 hours on the phone or in person together whilst managing about 26 people in our team. So it's one of those things that we've got to intuitively know where each other is at as well, not only ourselves, but it really just starts with, where am I at right now in this whole, you know, is things irritating me, or, you know, have I had enough sleep? Or my biggest thing is getting up in the morning and moving. I know if I don't do that, you know, the rest of the day is not going to be as flowy, but as long as I get my movement in, grab a coffee and just like really settle in the day is a really good start for me. And Dave sometimes does things a lot differently. So when you're away traveling, you've got to sort of just find that groove of each other as well. But yeah, I think becoming a founder is the greatest personal development journey you can ever go on.
Yeah, it really is. And I would highly recommend for the listener, if they haven't come across you guys before, the part 1 that you guys did with Josh Trent last year was an amazing podcast. And so you guys just went back on for part 2 in Austin. So hopefully, I'm sure that'll come out pretty soon. But one of the things that really resonated, a part of your story to both Harry and myself, is, Dave, I think you were saying when you were working at Stryker, the pay was really good, you were successful, but you felt like you weren't living up to your potential. And I think there's a lot of men that have a similar feeling. And part of Harry and I's founder story was, before we moved to Austin, before we had quit our jobs, we were training for an Ironman race together. So we went on a run in Boston on the Charles River, you know, beautiful river overlooking the entire skyline of Boston. And that was the thing that connected us, is we both just kind of admitted the fact that we felt like there was more potential that we had in store. And we realized that we just had a lot of these commonalities together, a lot of shared passions, and it just made sense for us to ultimately start Meat Mafia Noble. So if you could expand on that feeling of just, you know, what was that feeling like working that job, not achieving your potential, and what was that catalyst to kind of push you to go all in on this thing? And Brad, I'd also love to get your perspective on that, because I think your timelines were a little bit different when you both quit your jobs to go all in on this.
Yeah, for me, freedom, the idea of freedom had always been such a big, like, inspiration. And my version of freedom was being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want it. So if I was working for the man, I just always felt like I was bound somehow. And it was like, go do a 9 to 5 job, buy a house, start a family. It just never resonated with me. I'd seen so many of my good friends get themselves into that situation, and they were unhappy, and they were just kind of going through like a life that didn't seem that meaningful, or didn't seem like it was reaching their potential. And I just, I guess once I read those books on how to manifest, because nobody taught me that.
Yes.
I didn't have a mentor when I was younger that knew those secrets to life. So once I actually read it, and I think I consumed Think and Grow Rich in like a week, I just couldn't put it down.
It's so good.
And it impacted me so deeply. I was like, I actually have to try this. And that's what the book's saying. It's like, don't just read this and put it down. Like, read it again, write it down, write down your goals. And once we went through that process, and we started getting instant results. So then it was, I guess, a twist on what did we actually want to use this for? Like, we know it works now. What do we want to use it for? And it definitely wasn't going to be working for someone else.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I remember, because I know Bob Proctor has been a huge proponent of Think and Grow Rich. That's like his Bible. I think he's got one of the original, he had the original copies up until the day that he died. And he was a big catalyst in The Secret, which is such an amazing book and documentary. And when I searched Bob Proctor on Wikipedia, I think the second sentence was like, his philosophies are dangerously categorized as like pseudoscience or something like that. And I think what the four of us have experienced is like, not only is it not pseudoscience, a lot of what they're teaching in those books, it's just fundamental like laws of reality, and it's the ultimate truth too. And we realize that as well, just actually writing your goals down and being able to visualize yourself in that position of success. And then the 6 months go by and you can't even recognize who you are and you're proud of yourself. It sounds like that was both really impactful for both of you, right?
100%. And probably one of the biggest things within inside of that book that still remains with me now is just having the faith. Like, faith is such a powerful faith, and developing that just into a knowing. And that's what Brad and I have really well now. I mean, being a founder, as you guys know, it's not easy. No. Not every day is, selling heaps of product and hearing the cha-ching on your phone. Especially however, understanding that life isn't all rainbows and butterflies, but it is that cycle of ups and downs. It's like, regardless of how we're feeling in any given day, we just have the faith and the knowing that if we put attention on challenges or whatever it might be for long enough, the solutions will present. And that's a beautiful bond that we both have. We just know we're going to get the answer. And it might only be the next step. There might still be more challenge to come through before it evolves into what you want it to evolve into. But just having that faith and that knowing to keep putting the attention on it, and you always get there. So, those universal laws that are in those books, our experience of them is they are timeless and they absolutely work. They're amazing.
Yeah, and sometimes like we'll jump on the phone to each other and we'll just start laughing, right? Like, without saying anything about what's going on and knowing something's happening. So it's almost like that faith component, because for me, the opposite to faith is pain. Like, for me, and back to when it was my founder's story, I was in so much pain, like unconsciously, and I was always trying to fill a void. So I'll know the opposite when I put my attention on what we're doing now to faith is the visceral feeling of how much pain I was in during my own journey before I was a founder and, working for the man. So it's really interesting for me, like, doesn't matter how hard it gets, like, I know I've got the faith and the belief and the reps as well, like, because we've done thousands of reps now, and that's probably what, like, you guys have done as well. Like, the first couple of reps, doesn't matter what you do, is so hard and you feel like, oh, I can't lift this weight, or something like that, it's like, for me, it's like, I know how much pain I was in. I never want to go back there. So always having the faith and putting attention on that process is so much more rewarding, because I know I never want to go back to that.
When you say pain, are you saying kind of like lack of fulfillment in what you were doing?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was in a situation where I had an incredible partner at the time. I had a condo overlooking the city in Brisbane and had an incredible job, but I was still hollow inside. There was a question that I was sort of trying to ask myself, like, is this it? And that was the thing that was resonating for me. I could feel it. And my partner in the time, she just said, you've just got to go. You've just got to like find whatever you're looking for. And we were talking about it earlier, you know, like if a man doesn't have his why or a passion and a purpose of what he's doing, there's just such a split in his own consciousness. And that's what I felt at the time. And I was filling it full of like ultra marathons and then doing extreme sports, or, you know, starting my jiu-jitsu journey, and then I'd start surfing, and then I would do like CrossFit, you know, training twice a day. And I was always trying to fill it with some sort of movement or some sort of thing to just keep me distracted. And once I let all that stuff go, and we traveled out into the middle of the country in Australia in a place called Uluru in Alice Springs, like right in the middle of the country, the most extreme place in the country to go. And all of that space and expansion allowed a lot of that stuff to percolate and come through. So that was part of my journey, to sort of almost let a lot of that go and just have the time and space to be able to listen and be open to those answers, that what am I here doing? And so, yeah.
I just want to mention there as well, when we say faith, it's not just like faith in nothing. It's like faith in the truth of who we are, understanding that we are like these infinite eternal beings.
Yes.
And it's faith in that whatever we put our attention on, we will get the answer. Because it's there. It's just got to actually, we've just got to actually get it out of the field where it is.
Yeah, one of the thoughts that I was thinking about this yesterday. Faith is more of a range than a like certain point, and so you said turning faith into knowing, and I was thinking about this the other day. Like when you have full conviction in something, you're gonna get the most honest information back, even if it was like I had full conviction that was gonna work. I did everything in my fullest abilities to figure out if that was going to be the right thing to do, and then you acted on it, and maybe it wasn't the exact outcome you thought, but the conviction isn't the variable that was off. So I think that when I was struggling the most, it sounds like we kind of have a similar story, was when I had low conviction on basically everything I was doing. So I wasn't getting any information back on like what I needed to be doing to create the changes in my life to start living the life that I wanted to. So where I've gotten to now is like a totally different place. Like starting these businesses, it's like you have to have conviction around everything you do. Otherwise, you'll be out of business pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's like, you know, taking that faith and knowing that there's a starting point. It can be like an ounce of faith. I think they call it a mustard seed in the Bible. But that can grow and expand into everything that you do. And that conviction is just like the ultimate superpower.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's well said. And so Dave, you did you quit Stryker in 2011?
I actually hung around for a little bit longer. It took me a while to develop the courage.
Yes.
To leave that salary behind, and the commission.
Yeah, courage is a good word to describe that. How long did it take you? What year did you finally decide to pull the cord and go all in?
Yeah, it was about 12 months.
Okay. And
then I actually drove out to the centre of the country as well. For whatever reason, I was just drawn to get into the desert. There's not much in the centre of Australia. It'd be the equivalent to driving out to Denver, but kind of having nothing between San Fran and New York.
Yeah. So it took you about 12 months, Dave, and then Brad, how long did it take you before you finally pulled the ripcord?
It was a couple of years. It was a couple of years because I got so heavily into that CrossFit world as well. And I had that feeling of belonging in that because it was a community. But yeah, I still had, it would have been 2 or 3 years after that.
Yeah.
because the same thing, I lacked the courage to actually pull the cord.
Yes.
Because it's like we're not really taught to go into the unknown. And for that safety, it's like one of the things that we laugh about often. It's like no one actually teaches you to take that leap. Everything's sort of like, let's keep everything safe and in a box.
Yes.
And that unknown was the thing for me as well, and having the courage to take those steps to, you know, to go on that path and truly find what I love doing. So
I love that. That's well said. Yeah, part of why I was asking that question is I think it's cool to understand that you both have different risk tolerances, different timelines. It's actually, the story is very similar to Harry and myself, where I think one of Harry's superpowers is like his power of faith, not just his belief in God, but just belief in himself and his potential. So before Meat Mafia was even a figment of our imagination, he realized that private equity wasn't the right path for him. So he literally quit and moved to Austin, where for me, in my consulting job, I needed like about a year to really see the success of the business, to see something tangible before I was comfortable making that risk. And I think it's really interesting to hear how you both, in a similar way, had your own risk tolerances too. And I think it's a really important exercise for someone to just kind of get that stillness and understand how you're wired, because I do think on social media, there's like this allure of just quit your job and go all in on it. And for some people, that can be amazing. We had Wyatt Ewing on, who's the founder of Ice Barrel. You know, they're a $100 million company now, but he literally quit his sales job when the idea of Ice Barrel was in his head. And then there's people that need to fully supplement their income, but I think understanding what your risk tolerance is and who you are as a person is really important. And there's not, you know, it's funny, we're all talking about working for the man. And if you're working for the man and you're comfortable and you're happy, you're truly happy doing that, that's beautiful. But I think if you realize that there's this misalignment between what you're supposed to be doing and your profession, that's really like a sign from God that you should do the difficult thing and figure out what you're ultimately meant to be doing. Do you both agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's so well said. It's, yeah, to just quit your job and go out into the unknown is really, really hard. Like, that's the hardest thing I think you can ever do. Society's not set up to support that. You'll have people that care about you, like questioning things and thinking you're crazy, which is also natural. And for certain people or certain personalities or in certain people in different stages of life, it could actually be the worst thing they could ever do. I'm not sure.
Yes.
For us, it turned out to be super powerful and the best thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
But it is very individual, to your point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I love the way you articulated that, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest to someone to quit their job and just go and find what they love. However, I would suggest to them to try and find out what they love and like start setting goals. And you know, if that path becomes such a or that goal or that passion becomes such a fire inside of them, I think they'll organically move towards that. However, to just go all in can be terrifying.
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes people have got responsibilities that you just can't be doing that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't, same with Dave, we didn't have a wife or children, any of those, or any of those householder responsibilities. So like Dave's saying, I wouldn't recommend it like to everybody. And like you're saying, and it's well said, it's like some people going all in and doing that's really extreme and that's part of their nature. But for some people, it's like save up 12 months of, you know, buffer and you can have 12 months of living a certain way. I reckon that's a really beautiful way of doing it and giving yourself some freedom to make mistakes, you know. And I think depending on like how you're programmed as a child and some of the experiences you have will really set you up for that too, because for some people, like they could be listening to their families or their friends too much and that clouds their decision-making process. But I think really finding out what you love doing and then also getting still somehow, and if it's meditating, if it's praying, if whatever it is, or just going on some little trips by yourself and actually spending time with yourself. That's probably one of the things I highly recommend, because we're so inundated by things these days.
Yes.
I think subtracting a lot of things from your life is a really good opportunity as well.
it's so funny that you mentioned that stillness, because, you know, in full transparency, the last year for both of us has been the most rewarding year, but there's so many inputs and there's so many things to do constantly that one of the things that I realized, I kind of picked my head up and I was like, I'm not doing that many things that are actually restorative for me. I'm praying a little bit, but I'm not really meditating. I'm not really reading materials that are going to make me feel really good. I'm not necessarily getting all that time by myself. So this last weekend, I literally just put nothing on the calendar Saturday and Sunday. You did the same thing too. And I actually felt this weird feeling that I should read Think and Grow Rich again. And I read like the first 6 chapters of the book and just was like getting coffee outside in the sunshine. And I don't know, there was just something about the ethos of that book that hit me differently. And it gave me this incredible clarity of like, I know exactly what we need to be doing. And it just like took all the pressure off of how I was feeling. So yeah. I completely relate to what you were just saying.
Yeah, I've done that recently in the last couple of weeks. Just before we come on this trip to the US, it's like I went to a place called Tasmania, which is like the last land mass to the Antarctica. So it's like it's brutal. Yeah, it's brutal, right? So it's a beautiful spot in Australia, and we love going down there as well. And I was down there with my partner, and just those first couple of days, I was like still checking my phone, like the inputs that you're talking about. And Dave just said, it was the first time I've actually had some space for a couple of years. And Dave said, I'll take care of things, but you're still like, you're plugged in a way. And I think it was the 3rd day that I just went, I'm just going to turn all the notifications off and just drop out. And when I got back to Brisbane, I was like, the gears were just moving so much slower. And I've gone, then we've got to come to the US, and the gears move even faster when we come through here too. So it was interesting, but a lot of stuff was coming through as well. Like the path that we're on, the direction we're heading in, I've become really clear on some pieces that just fell in when I was away. So yeah, it's so important. And we talk about it often, like through this whole experience through MANNA, the elements have been the greatest teacher. So if we've ever got anything going on, getting back into the elements, jumping into the ocean, and having those little micro breaks is really, really important just for that psyche, because it's getting smashed 24/7.
Totally. It's such a great point. We've both experienced that, like in its fullest, just having those moments where you're like, personally, travel for me is something that I've realized over the past few months that I love doing. It gives me a ton of creative inspiration. It lets me think differently and get outside of my normal patterns. And then I just like stopped doing it this last year. And I was like, why am I not operating the way I normally operate? And I went on like one trip and just had all this like resurgence of this energy. And that to me was a sign that I need to just spend a little bit more time incorporating travel into my, monthly or like quarterly flow of things, just to get outside of the bubble that we're in, just trying to build stuff. Because it makes you, I think it fills your cup back up. So I'm curious for you guys, like with the travel piece, it sounds like you guys have both used that as a tool, even before starting MANNA, like with some of the questions that you guys had about like who you wanted to be and what you wanted to do. How would you recommend that for someone who's maybe about to start their journey into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always go by the thing, there's a season for everything. And I feel like there's been times with MANNA that I've just gone all in, and that's all I'm worried about. And that's like 24/7 from the moment I'm waking up to the moment I'm going to sleep. That's all I want to focus on. Like, and sometimes your health, and sometimes your family and friends and relationships get neglected. But I feel like for me, the way I live now, it's just like moving with the seasons of what a business and what it takes to be successful in that space. And then always listening to people that are closest to you as well. Like, I think it's time for you to like take a break. But I know I've got family and friends that sometimes go, you're just going to have to slow down. You're working too hard. But I don't ever feel like what I'm doing is work. Mm-hmm. And you guys could probably relate to, and we talk about it often, like it doesn't feel like work to me. But yeah, for me, the things that I do during the week are important as well. Eating right, drinking the best water I can find. But I love jiu-jitsu, and I know when I'm rolling on a mat for an hour, I'm not in my mind. Like I'm actually viscerally feeling what I'm doing and actually in my body. And that's really, really important. And those little micro breaks are like something that I sort of hold dearly as well, because I know there's no other inputs but what's right in front of me. So yeah, and taking short breaks are really important every quarter, like you're saying. But yeah, a lot of freedom. We've got a lot of freedom to do what we want. That's the way we've designed what we do. Yeah, that's how I feel about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess a big part of MANNA for us is it's coming from a place of service as well. So we don't have a business plan. We don't have goals of where we want to get to. We do have some goals actually, but they're not kind of, from my perspective, necessarily like strictly where we need to get to or anything like that. It's just more intentions.
Right.
And we've got I'll speak for myself again, I've got such a deep relationship with God and with Source that it allows me just to kind of surrender the process a lot. So I spend heaps of time in nature. I live near the beach. So I'll go for a beach walk every morning, weather permitting. And often in the afternoon as well, I'll try and watch a sunrise or a sunset. And that really resets me because I go into that relationship that I have with the elements and with God, and just being gratitude, understanding that life's going to present everything to me. So just dealing with that in the moment, my ability to respond to that in the moment. And then while I'm walking, so the vision for MANNA, I'll think about that every day at multiple times. I'll just see it as clearly as I can and like expand it out as clearly as I can. And then the rest of the day, because we probably I have probably 300 or 400 messages come at me a day. So we'll get through a lot of those in the first few hours, and then there's meetings and different things like that. But we have such a beautiful team, and coming from that space of service really allows us to surrender a lot of the, I guess, complexity and big decisions. We just make them on the go with the best of our ability. And however that unfolds for us is fine, because kind of outside of the busyness of MANNA and the project itself, we're super like comfortable without having any of it. So that was the greatest thing from my perspective of us actually taking that time and getting used to being by ourselves, being used to being quiet, was that all of this is a bonus. And like, that's true for us. Like we had nothing when we started this.
Yes.
Even though I went from striker earning great money to then starting a business, there was years in between that where I was wandering around the planet with nothing except for my relationship with God and the elements, and miracles were happening day after day. And so that's also where a lot of that faith comes from. And I have a knowing that I'm okay and looked after regardless of MANNA or finances or anything like that. Whereas the fear for a lot of people of not having money is terrifying, or not being able to pay the bills. So I feel like we don't have that.
Yeah.
And even though, like not having money will put a lot of people into depression.
Yes.
So it's back to that thing again. It's like, don't necessarily want to recommend to people like just quit your job, don't have a plan to make money and see what happens, because for some people that could be really scary, but also put them into a very difficult situation physically and mentally. But that's one of the greatest things, like I'm saying with Brad and I, is it's not that I don't want to have any money ever again, or don't want to have a roof over my head, or be sleeping in the car again. However, if we do, we're just as happy.
Yeah. I mean, that is the ultimate place to operate from, I think. Being able to, it sounds like your relationship with fear is something where you can recognize when you see it, but it's not going to necessarily affect how you operate your life. You have that trust element with how you're rooted and the way that you're designed to make decisions, and you know that it's all going to work out. So I think, again, like for people listening, that is like an amazing place to be able to operate from, because you're never operating from a place of fear of losing money. Because I think that's when people get in trouble. They start getting that scarcity mindset, like, oh, we're going to lose money. and then they start lowering their thinking instead of thinking we have so much that we can access. And if it all goes away, you're still the same.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful point. And even as you're saying that, like one of the things that we're super proud of at MANNA is we just won't compromise on quality. So if we wanted to make money, we wouldn't do a lot of the things the way we do them. In particular, where we get our ingredients and nutrients from. It costs us a fortune, and the way we package it and all that costs us a fortune, but we won't compromise on that because our total mission is to get those out to people and make them available for people. So regardless of how much of that sold or how much profit it makes, we actually don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the advice that a CFO would shudder at.
Yeah.
It's just, but it's
Yeah,
like
there are a few CFOs that just yelling at the screen right
Yeah.
there, or just
Yeah. And that's why, so I'm the CFO.
beautiful.
For that reason.
Yes.
well appointed. It's the best appointment we've ever made.
Chief Faith
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
love
Well
it.
done.
I love
That's
that.
a great one, Chief Faith
Yeah.
Officer.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think there are these certain principles that like a business book or a CFO just can't quantify. It's just, they're just your values. And I can tell very clearly that if you were compromising at all in terms of quality by a percentage, I don't think either of you would be comfortable putting your names in front of MANNA. And Brad, I think what you'd said about the work that you're doing now is you said it doesn't feel like work. And then Dave, you said it feels like your mission. And it's really around these like ancient minerals. I feel like that's your mission, is like bringing the educational awareness of these ancient minerals to the masses. So even though you both are responsible for Shilajit becoming much more popular the last 2 years, these minerals have been around for thousands and thousands of years. So for the listener that maybe hasn't heard of Shilajit or has heard of it but doesn't know what it is, maybe you could just explain what it is and what was it about those minerals that made you realize, wow, we really want to dedicate our life to building a company around raising awareness for this.
Yeah, and again, as you're talking, I'm just feeling one of the reasons why we are of service at MANNA is the relationship that we have with the elements, which are really the creators of these sacred substances that are in the product. So because we've spent so much time in nature and so much time deepening our relationship with the elements and these substances, it's like for us to try and adjust that or make huge profit from that wouldn't be right on any level inside of us. Like it's just not something that would resonate for me personally. And Shilajit it's the most concentrated form of nutrients that I've found during that 10-year journey. So it has everything in it that our body needs to thrive. But the mineral component, it has all of the minerals. It has, let's say, 90 of the minerals on the periodic table. It also has vitamins, fulvic acid, all of the amino acids, has triterpenes, and the minerals themselves, it kind of gets a little bit esoteric from the relationship we've developed with them. But all those minerals on the periodic table, they're actually vortexes of energy, and they're the building blocks of life itself. So everything's energy, and then energy transforms into matter or form, which is what we get to experience. But the first iteration of that from the subatomic world is the atomic world. And that's what the periodic table is. It's all of the different atomic structures, whether it's gold or magnesium or hydrogen. All of the protons, science says, are the same. All of the neutrons and electrons, science says they're indistinguishable from each other. But they're not particles or waves like science currently says. They're all little vortices or little energy fields or energy centers, and they're alive. So for our bodies to have access to all of those, and then the intelligence of the body to decide what it needs, is another deeper reverence of who we are and what life is. And so many of those energy centers or little vortexes or minerals, whatever we want to call them, are no longer in our food because they're no longer in our soil. So if our body doesn't have access to them, it's going to be compromised in some way. There's a lot of research now that shows if we don't have access to all of those minerals, that's where a lot of the illness and disease is actually coming from, because our body's starving for those frequencies, for that energy. Yeah.
Can you guys talk about your first experience with Shilajit? Like when you first tried it, was it just something that was like, this is incredible? Like when you take, like for us, it's like when you have liver for the first time. Like I remember Brett and I recorded a podcast. We had some liver and raw milk, and both of us were like, felt like we were on some sort of drugs. I'm wondering if you guys felt the same way with Shilajit.
Yeah, so my first experience with it, because the first thing you do is stick it in your mouth, right, was this is disgusting. Because it's so intense, and it was in a black resin form. However, then, yeah, because it's a biogenetic stimulant, it will actually, like, it has nootropic effects and upregulation of energy, so it will actually give you a similar experience to what you said. So yeah, my experience with it was definitely could feel the energy, got a buzz from it, and was really intrigued, like, what is this stuff and what's it going to do to me? Because it is just such an intense experience to have.
Yeah, it's almost like a light switch that goes off. Like it's the first time the intelligence within the body knows that it's getting, like, it's turned on. So that the light switch just goes on. So because, like what Dave is saying, like, the lack of micronutrients in all the soils these days, like, it's crazy. So when your body actually gets the nutrients that it actually needs, it's probably what you guys have got from a macro level. We've got it on the micro level. Those micronutrients, the body, they're the building blocks, as Dave is saying, or I like to call them the raw materials of all life. And if you're not having that, it's almost like you're constantly lacking those micronutrients in your diet. So for me, it was the first time I had it. It was like a light switch went on, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is it. This product is incredible. So it's an interesting experience, and it did taste like crap the first time I take it.
Yeah.
And it was like a twofold. It was like, oh, just tastes like crap. Oh, something else is happening. So it was like a double hit. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I find that when you're on a more, conventional ultra processed foods diet, things like Shilajit, liver, etc., your palate isn't adjusted to the taste. But because our taste buds have really been manipulated by a lot of these processed food companies, but then the more that you lean into eating these single ingredient natural foods, it's like the beautiful taste of a steak with just salt on it. Like you can, like the senses, like the way the palate lights up, it's amazing. And then I find that over time, those foods, not only do they not taste bad, your body almost craves them in a lot of ways too. So clearly this is something that's very personal to both of you. And you have a unique way of getting the Shilajit, right? Where a lot of people get it from the Himalayas. Aren't you? Are you initially getting it from the Dead Sea? Is that where the minerals are coming from? Is that right?
No, so there's two substances within MANNA. There's minerals that we get from the ocean and the Dead Sea, so that's kind of the ocean mineral component. And then there's the Shilajit, which we do get from those high mountain tops.
Got it.
Mainly through the Himalayas. We also get it from Siberia as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys, I think I've heard that a lot of places, the Shilajit, they get it from like 5,000 feet above the mountain, where you guys are, is it 16,000 feet? Is that where you're getting it from?
Yeah, so we get it from above 16,000 feet.
That's
and
amazing.
yeah, I mean, it's because it's expanding quickly now, and it is such an expensive substance. I've been saying to people recently, you can get it for $20 a kilo from China in a powder form with other fillers in it, or you can buy it from like a royal family in Tibet, and it'll cost you like $2,000 a kilo. So there's a huge variation. Like that's 100x, right?
Wow.
So yeah, we spent a lot of time doing our due diligence on where the best stuff comes from, checking that in laboratory. Good way to check the quality of Shilajit is its fulvic acid component, its amino acid component as well. Its protein content, like it's got 32% protein, which is pretty high for plant-based. So it's really important where it comes from. The nutrient density is really important, and then checking that there's no nasties in it is really important as well. So, we've gone over and above, and really happy with our supply now and where it comes from. Last year we employed about 600 people to go out, Indigenous people through the Himalayas, to go out and collect Shilajit. Wow. And at those altitudes you can only get it for about 8 weeks of the year, because the rest of the time it's under the snow. So there's quite a bit of logistics behind it. But again, like, once you understand what it is, you just want the best version of it, because that has its own life force. People are going to be attracted to it. Like you said, even though on its own that straight resin tastes pretty average, there's something inside the intelligence of the body that knows that it wants more of that, because it's got all of those things that we've been starving for. And that's definitely the case with Shilajit. The amount of people that come back to us and say, the first couple of times we tasted MANNA, it was pretty funky, but now, like, our body's just craving it. We've just got to stay on it. And they've been subscribing for 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is. Yeah,
I'm envisioning like a bit of a gold rush with this product. Like, it seems like the sector is blowing up. Like, I've seen a lot of products come to market, and you said there's such a wide range of where people are getting the product from. But are you guys concerned at all about just the availability of getting the product?
No, only because we understand how big those regions that it's coming from are. It sounds like when we're saying we get it from above 16,000 feet and these mountaintops that it might run out. But those regions are huge. Like the Himalayan mountains is massive. It also comes from like through Kashmir, Mongolia, Russia, China, Siberia. So we're talking like half the planet just in those regions. Like just the region through Russia and Siberia is probably that. There's a mountain range up through there which would be equivalent of like LA to New York and back.
That's wild.
So out of all the Shilajit we've taken out of the mountains across all the brands, it'd be like less than 0.001%. There's I wouldn't say it's as abundant as seawater, but it's very abundant.
I think one of the things, there's two things that I'm taking from you guys. I think number one, I think there's this misconception around CPG where so many different industries and different brands are oversaturated and, I have this idea, but it's probably already been done before. I think you guys are a great example of like, there always is another blue ocean opportunity, like a mineral, a supplement, some concept that's very personalized to you, where maybe it is untapped, so you can be kind of the trailblazer in that space. And then secondly, I think what I'm learning, and something that Harry and I have seen, is that founders, the ability to tell stories, especially from a founder's perspective, is so important. And you guys just have such authenticity behind the journey that you've been on the last 10 years, the way this supplement has helped like positively impact your health. I think that those are two things that you guys have done super, super well that I think a lot of other founders can learn from too. Like just that authenticity and being able to tell that story. Like we want to believe in the power of stories. And I think we've really like fallen away from that in modern society.
Yeah, it's well said. It's almost like owning your own story is really powerful. I've struggled with that a lot in the past, but since doing this project, that's becoming more authentic because it's my story.
Yes.
I'm not like when I work for someone else, there was always something missing because I'm telling someone else's story. And I think that's what I love about podcasting and meeting guys like yourselves is like you can sit down and tell your story and it's authentic to you. And that's what podcasting does as well. It's like gives everyone a platform to tell their own story. And there's such a connection to that, to your point. Like your audience is going to connect to that because it's actually authentically you. And that's what I love. But yeah, story is a really powerful and impactful thing.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like inspiring myself and inspiring others is really important because it doesn't matter what we do. If we can just inspire one more person, like it's such a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah, it really is. Do you guys remember like the feeling of when you sold your first order on Shopify? Because I remember for us when we got that first noble ding on Shopify, like it was like the first, $1 that we had made from the internet. And it was just like the best feeling. It was almost the way that you said the light bulb went on when you were taking Shilajit. It was like the light bulb went on of like just the amazing leverage of the internet. So I'm wondering if you were, maybe it was not that moment, but like another one that really pops up that's special for you guys in this, 10-year journey that you've been on. Is there anything that comes to mind there?
Yeah, definitely. We still have those dings still on. You guys would have heard. We would have heard it. And when we started a thing really early on in the piece, it was like we'd just go, yeah, like every time. And I don't know if you guys have got it with your subscription model. When it ticks over at 12 o'clock, it's different in Australia. It's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and when we're together, it's just like bing, 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 bing. So it's like we just laugh about. But the journey to get to that point is so brutal. But yeah, that's the one thing that I love is when that ding goes off. It's just, it's such a satisfying feeling that that all the hard yards you're doing is paying off. But yeah, it's quite a funny thing when you actually start hearing it. It's like, oh, we're actually doing something good. And even I spend a fair bit of time in our customer service and going in, and because sometimes in this game, and I don't know if you guys have experienced it, like with all the good things, there's obviously the bad things that come through as well. And just knowing that there's a balance and a harmony with that as well. And that's what I always do, is like not getting too carried away with all the really amazing things, because there's some deep learnings in the things that aren't going well. So putting attention on that's really important for us as well. And I think that's important for founders to know, is like, and Dave does a great job with this, is let's just not take any of that stuff personally. It's just like room for improvement, and to put attention on that and to get better. And I think that's a really important thing as well, is like, yeah, really celebrate the wins, but also celebrate all of the feedback is really important as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a mental mastery course in itself, like being able to appreciate some of those low moments for what they are, like not necessarily categorizing them as good and bad. Like I feel like even just like with emotions or just things that happen to us in general, it's always good or bad. And I've heard a story of like, this guy, I think it's a story of like this guy going up a mountain and like his horse dies, and somebody asks him like, is that, is it a good thing or a bad thing? He's like, well, we'll see. And then like some good thing happens to him, and he's like, oh, it actually turns out to be good. And the story just keeps going.
Yeah.
So it's all perspective, which I feel like you guys like kind of master. I'm wondering, what has it been like bringing people into the fold and actually having people start to work for you guys in the business? Like, have you seen your guys' unique relationship being able to be expanded out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what I was talking about with Brett earlier is like finding and empowering people to find out what they're good at, and really just like going all in on that, and just saying, find out what you're good at and just do that, and just go all into that, and whatever I can do to support you. And we hate managing people, because that's not what the business is about. The project's not about that. So it's almost like for us is empowering people to find what they're amazing at and just tell them to go all in on that. And we sort of, from a leadership point of view, we flip the script and say, what more else can I help you with? Like, what else do you need from me? And that's not only the team that work with us, but also our contractors, and what else do you need from me? And that's really an open door for people to come in and out, and it's just like to support them on their own journey, because as I said at the start of the podcast, it's a personal development journey. It doesn't matter who it is. So that's how we operate internally. And it's really powerful. We've got one guy that works with us that looks after. He's our director of all of our manufacturing and logistics, and he's been a dear brother of ours for 25 years. And just to see his growth over the last 12 months has been incredible, and that sort of lights me up as well, because he was coming from a job that he was miserable about, and he had a lot of life stuff going on, and now he's a different person. And it's from all of us putting maximum amount of attention on what he is good at, and his attention to detail, and just going all in on that. And it's just, he's absolutely killing it. And that's the other thing that lights me up massively with what we do now. It's super empowering.
Yeah, he's killing it. He loves it. And then he's able to take all that off of your plate, so you can both focus on the things that you're both uniquely talented at, that you love to do as well. that's one of the things that we've learned as well. Because I feel like in the beginning, at least for the first year, you kind of do have to eat shit a little bit and do everything. And then when you reach a certain point of scale, you can bring in amazing people and expand the team, and they're way better at these specific pockets of the business that you are. And then it kind of like allows you to focus on the things that you love to do that light you up.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, totally.
What do you both think are your own like unique superpowers or things that you love to do within MANNA?
You can answer that.
For me, it's the vision and just that attention to detail on constant improvement. Like if there's an area we can improve on, it doesn't matter what it is, then I guess it's that pursuit of excellence. And like we're reinvesting any extra revenue back into R&D and back into making the product even better. That's a big part of why I'm doing it. I just want to have that absolute best version of the ocean plasma, of the Shilajit, of the gold, all of those practices, all of those processes. So our ocean plasma goes through a 3-year solar evaporation process. Our flavor profile to help with the Shilajit taste is handmade by an Ayurvedic professor of 50 years over like a 10-week period. The gold that we have in our new product is 24 karat gold that goes through a calcineration process over 3 months and then gets broken down into a nanometer sized particles in a lab. So each of these areas is the absolute best version of those micronutrients from the ocean, the plant world, and the metallic world. The metallic side of it becomes bioavailable in that nanometer size. But just the attention to detail that's involved in all of those processes is super intense. But that's what I believe my skill is like finding the absolute best of those, maintaining that level of passion and excitement, and then the vision of why that's so important, and like doing that study and education on, you know, what's the best thing for our biology outside of, you know, faith and those energetic relationships that we can have, but what's the best physical thing we can give to our body? And if there's something new or better, we will look into it. But that's what I believe MANNA is and will become known as a brand, is just this incredible quality that doesn't compromise on any of those or any of the quality. Incredible brand that just doesn't compromise on quality.
Yeah,
regardless.
And Dave's vision. So Dave will hold the vision, and it's pretty simple from a point of view. Like I just say that I look after the how and the who. So yeah, so we'd like to keep things very simple. So for me, I just dive into who we're going to do it with and how we're going to do it. And that's been going down like all these different rabbit holes. So that's the stuff that I'm a genius at, right? Is to find out how we're actually going to do it and geek out on that. And I love doing all that stuff. So it's like our partnerships, our relationships, you know, our team, all of that sales component. I love doing all of that. And we can both interchange in those roles as well too, which is really, really important. And you actually learn off each other. So from a vision point of view and a detail point of view, I'm learning off Dave. And from the other point of view, he's learning off me as well. And to remain open for both and anyone else in our team that's bringing their skill sets in as well, is to learn off them. And that makes the whole unit grow together. And that's what's really important. Dave does a fantastic job of holding that vision. And there's a lot of things that are non-negotiable. And everyone knows that. So it's really, really simple for us to operate in our own silos and then come together in a team. So, but yeah, really focusing on, it's a great question, focusing what you're good at is really, really important because things get done.
Yeah, and when you're developing something that people are actually going to put into their body, into this sacred temple, for us, that's such an honor. Like there's such a level of trust and faith that people are putting in us. So it's so important for us to honor that process and say, like, this is the best thing we know of to give you. And we're talking about before about that ding on the phone. for me, I love that. And, you know, some days it's like 300 or 400 dings, but it's like, I just love going on there and actually looking who it is, where they come from, and being like, thank you. You know, like, thanks for the trust. And just knowing that when they get that product, that's going to be such a blessing for them in their life. Yeah.
Now, did those roles that you guys kind of identified, did those just eventually over time organically start to surface as like, these are our clear strengths, or was that kind of from the beginning established? And the reason I asked the question is I think that, you know, when you're starting out and like bootstrapping something, it's like Brett was saying, you try to do everything, and then you realize like, you're like, I should not be doing that or I should just be doing all of this. But it's easy to want to have your hand in like 15 different buckets, but eventually you're not even allowing any of your gifts to come through if you're focused on too many things.
Yeah, it's well said. Yeah, no, I think it's I think with experience, and because we've known each other for a very long time, I think that's been our biggest advantage too. So, and naturally as a human, you gravitate to what you're good at, but also exposing yourself to what you're not good at and the lessons you can learn from that and upskill. And I think that's been something that we've done very, very well, is like learning aspects of the business that, you know, we probably don't enjoy, but we'll have to do. And we have to, as you say, eat shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's making you well-rounded to understand every aspect of the business. And Dave and I could answer any question with any aspect of the business. And that's really important for us as well when we've got other people coming in. But yeah, I think we knew each other enough to know what certain aspects of the project would be our strengths. Yeah, for sure.
And one of the beautiful things with being a founder is you do have to, or for a startup anyway, you have to build it from the ground up. You have to do all of those things yourself, so you always know them.
Yes.
I mean, the business has expanded now to the point where there's a lot of the things that Brad does that I couldn't jump in and do because he's had to go on a path of learning those, in particular with a lot of the sales and marketing stuff. But yeah, still most of it, especially on the supply side, we can jump in at any time and still do daily to help our supply team with any aspect of any of it, really.
Yeah, moving all the way from like regulatory, I can go all into our regulatory, making sure that our testing's right, our importing and exporting, because with our supply, we're getting products from all over the world. Yeah. So for us, logistics, making sure and understanding the nuance in a lot of those areas is profound. As like you were saying, we're actually manufacturing the product as well. We're not getting a third party in to handle the whole regulatory, the manufacturing, the logistics. No, we're handling all of those touch points. So like as Dave said, we can jump in at any time depending on where the team is to answer those questions from a regulatory point of view, from an import-export point of view as well too. So yeah, it's a unique business like that. Like I love the sales and marketing part, but I also know the importance of our supply side, because to get MANNA into those sachets is such a journey. Like it's been a brutal journey to get, like Dave's saying, is the ease of use for like our customers is something that we've spent millions of dollars on and millions of hours of attention on. And it's been brutal along the way, but to put attention just on that supply and not worry about anything else in the business except getting that right is really, really important.
Yeah, and that brutal journey really is, it's a reflection of just the commitment that you both have to the quality of the product and not compromising on anything. And the cool thing about the way things are trending in CPG is that I think customers are craving founders that really care about that quality and that lack of compromising, and they're willing to almost pay whatever price point you guys charge for that commitment to quality too, which I think is so cool, that there is this just like heart and soul that I think we're craving from customers and companies. It's almost like this sacred transaction. And so I think that's an amazing thing that gives us a lot of faith and a lot of encouragement. I'm really interested by the friendship that you guys have too. The fact that you guys have known each other for 30 years and are business partners. Again, another similarity that I think the four of us have. And it makes me think to some there's two friends that Harry and I have that are based in Austin, Dave and Chris, and they're the founders of this company called Jasper AI. And so they're the fastest SaaS company to reach $1 billion valuation ever. And they're like the nicest, most humble, God-fearing men that you'll ever meet. And so they're friends, but they're mentoring us in a lot of ways too. And one of the first things they said that when they met both of us together is that they always they said that their business was really an extension of their friendship. And some people tell you to keep those things separately, but they focused on friendship first, business second. And their theory was that if our friendship and our relationship is really good, then we'll be making the right business decisions from the right place and the right heart posture. And I'm curious if that's something that you guys agree with as well, and how you handle being really close friends and brothers like you described, and then also business partners and co-founders too.
Yeah, I feel like because we did take that time out again and found that deep space inside of ourselves, that's the most important thing for us. So our friendship comes first, and there's a level of trust amongst that knowing that then we can extend into the project, I guess. So I feel like just having that like trust and knowing, and Brad mentioned something really powerful before, and he said putting the other person first. I think Brad does a better job at that than I do. Sometimes there's like that obsession that we both have on the manifestation of things as well. And when I say obsession, I guess a lot of that is just because we understand that through that obsession, it's the manifestation will come out. We're giving that manifestation the best opportunity to be the best form of that manifestation that it can be. And I'll get into that obsessive state and visual state quite intensely. But yeah, because we have that deep level of friendship and trust, that will always be there. So even if we're having a bad day or a challenging week or whatever that might be, we just almost have like a trust and a knowing that we can come back to. And the project is secondary to that, even though there's so much obsession within getting that component right as well. So I don't know, what would you
Yeah, no, it's well said. I think when you know yourself and have that self-responsibility as well, it allows you to then express in any other relationship authentically. And as Dave's talking there, like, I understand when we're, say, on these trips and when we're out talking and doing podcasts and communicating, and like, I know what state Dave needs to get in for some of those, and what my role is, and understanding what my role is really, really important. And I agree, like, putting our relationship and our friendship first is like the utmost importance. And that's the way we talk about MANNA as a project, because we get the opportunity, and we're blessed to get the opportunity to be like stewards for the products, stewards for the elements. So holding that vision's really important as well. That our relationship is not like MANNA, like, we're not MANNA. We've got our relationship, we've got the project, and they're two different things. They're not the same thing. So that's really important for us, and just being able to understand each other. And there's times where Dave knows that I need a break from the business and just take some time out. So it's actually understanding each other, and I feel like there's a lot of information, so I never work with your friends and all that, but I feel like that's our superpower as well. Like, I really do, and I can see that in the both of you too, as like, as a deep understanding, and you don't want to be like each other. And that's one thing that Dave and I do really well. Like, I don't want to be like Dave, and Dave doesn't want to be like me. And it's not because we don't like each other. It's just the fact, that, you know, like, just be authentically you, and the rest will look after itself. And I think what your mentors said is super powerful. And I think that's the opportunity now. Is I'd like to encourage more friends to do things together, And it's not saying that you're going to have, you're not going to agree on everything, but that fundamentally you've got a core principle there that you've got a deep belief and faith in each other.
Mm. Yeah, and I'll give you guys an example of like the obsession and kind of intensity of the vision that sometimes comes through, because it only happened last week. So the bulk manufacturing of our new MANNA gold product that has 24 karat gold in the product, there was probably about 100 different components that had to come together for last Thursday for us to do the manufacturing. And I was managing a lot of those components, and it was down to the wire, and we'd literally flown over here. We'd spent 40 hours traveling from Australia to get to Minneapolis for that day. And the last component to come in, there was 3 components that needed to come in on the morning of the manufacturing.
Yeah.
And one of them was $500,000 worth of gold in a nanoparticle form. And it was touch and go whether it was going to make it. And, we were locked in for manufacturing. And it all got there, it all arrived perfectly, and we had to put it together. But that was probably a good example where, Brad was holding space for me in a way, because I just knew the different components of what needed to happen on that day for that to be manufactured in the way that I've been envisaging that for 10 years. That was literally the culmination of like 10 years of being exposed to these different versions of our chemical gold and pure 24 karat gold. And through that level of attention and dealing with all of those different relationships, even as we were traveling, it worked out perfectly. However, if I'd dropped the ball for a moment, we might have missed that opportunity, or it mightn't have happened as it did happen. So there's those moments still exist, and that's one that happened just this time last week.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to get the job done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And we constantly laugh about it, because it's like, we're always amazed that it always works out exactly how it has to. It does. It's crazy. It's like every single time you just laugh, you just go, oh, yeah, of course it's going to work out this way.
Yeah.
How will it not? So, yeah, it's crazy.
Brad, what's going through your head as, it sounds like, Dave, maybe you had the vision in your head, you have all the little things that need to get done to get there so the manufacturing day actually happens the way it's supposed to. But your role, I think, is equally as important, where it's like, I need to make sure he's, still feeling supported and, can still see that vision so that this all can come together and everything happens the right way. So
yeah, it's almost automatic for me. It's like I can viscerally feel it from an intensity point of view. So I just know what I automatically just go into, what's our next step. Or like, so if we're flying, or we've got to organise travel, or we've got to, because the way that we travel, we don't book our accommodation until probably we're jumping on the flights and all that. So I just make sure we're just heading in the direction that we need to go in, and putting one step in front of the other, and just taking the responsibility on any of the peripheral stuff is putting myself in front of it, and making sure I'm the buffer between that and what we've actually, the intensity of what we've got to do. For example, with the gold manufacturing is like, I'll just handle everything on the peripheral and making sure that we're getting to point B, and then we'll just make sure that there's enough space for the magic to happen. And that's the important, because I understand deeply that if we put fear to it, it won't sort of come out the way it needs to. It's like, give it space. Dave's going to get super intense. I've just got to point the ship in the direction that we've got to go in. Anything externally is coming in, I'll just handle it. And we don't articulate it. I just can viscerally feel and understand over the last 10 years how important that is for the brand. So yeah, it just goes into autopilot. Yeah.
So a lot of this communication is happening without actually having to speak. It's just, you guys know each other that well.
Totally.
Yeah. 100%.
Can relate.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's like, when Dave is in his element, in his arena, versus when you're in your arena too. So it's like something like manufacturing, he's got that intensity, he's got that vision, he knows what he needs to do, and then you figure out how you can play your part. Whereas I would imagine if it's something like retail, you know, trying to get into like an Erewhon or sales related or something like that, that's your element. And then Dave, you figure out the role that you can play too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. And there's some big parts in that manufacturing as well, you know, in real time, that I can see that Dave's looking intensely into something and he's seeing a problem, and I go, I know exactly what the problem and the solution is to that. And then I'll just go off on my own and go, nah, this is what we need to do. And it's like, that's where I can sort of jump in as well, because like we were saying before, I've got the experience in the manufacturing now just as much. And I know that there's some workarounds that we can do as well, and to offer, instead of just holding space and being passive, it's being proactive and knowing the timing and knowing intuitively when to come in. And I think that's sort of one of my superpowers, is intuitively just reading the situation and acting when I've got to act. But also checking in, is it my fear or is it my stuff coming up, is really important too. Because you don't want to project your stuff when someone's in an intense moment like that. Yeah, because you can relate, right? Like when you think, oh, I'm just going to go out and help. It's like, I just check myself and go, oh, is this my stuff? It's like, can this actually help? And just sort of zoom out and have that real helicopter view of what's going on is really, really important.
I always think it's amazing, like when you look at MANNA or just like any beautiful product, like you just see it in its final form, like this amazing, like beautiful, simple little package. And there's like literally thousands and thousands of like different iterations and permutations and decisions and things that almost didn't go right that worked out to like get that product in its final form, right? Like the consumer doesn't have that perspective that you guys have, which I don't know. I'm kind of thinking out loud. I just think that's such a cool thing.
Yeah, and some, it's just like a sleight of hand or a word of like, oh, I love your packaging, or, you know, oh, it just feels so good in the hand. Yeah. Because that's exactly what, from a design point of view, that, you know, especially Dave's worked with a lot of our design team on getting that box to fit perfectly in the palm, and the tactility of that and the utility of that is really, really important. So when people acknowledge that, and to your point, it's like, oh, yeah, they actually, yeah, we did it. Like, and there's been many times along the way where we're like, high five, yeah, we've done it. And I think that's really important too, is to like really feel and viscerally feel those wins, because I'm not attached to any outcome, like Dave was saying earlier, to the project, but it's actually look each other in the eye and just go, yeah, we actually won on that. And be really thankful and grateful, and just be in that moment and be really present with it. It's really important, because who knows what's going to happen? You know, I've got no idea, but just to like to tally those up. And I laugh about it with Dave often. It's like, I'll go to my grave knowing that we've had a red hot crack at everything.
I love that. Yeah.
And it's like, and every aspect of our life, and especially with this project, it's like some of the things that have happened and some of the people we've met and some of the places that we've ended up, it's like, oh, this would have never happened if we didn't create this incredible offering. So yeah, we're super grateful.
You made me think about this, because I used some of your guys' product before we got in here, and I was just thinking about how simple it was to get it into the bottle, and how many hours went into that little squirt of the product. I'm like, that's like thousands and thousands of hours just, and the consumer's just sitting there like, so convenient. Like to me, I was, as like your guys' friends, I'm thinking like, man, that's almost like kind of a disservice for how much work that goes into it, but it's a testament to the amount of work that you guys have done getting every little detail right like that. So it's cool to just be able to experience these products through your guys' vision.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. It's because we've actually been selling the products for a decade.
Yeah.
So we've been selling Shilajit resin in a little purple jar. And I guess along that way, we've also figured out, like, it's not ideal. If you leave the lid off it, it goes hard like concrete and you can't get it out.
Really?
Or if you get some on the screw cap, you can't get the lid off. And it doesn't taste the best just in its normal resin form. So yeah, we went on a massive journey. We're actually in R&D for 5 years with those sachets.
Wow. Dude.
And yeah, and I mean, you won't see those sachets used for other supplements, because the work that you have to go through to kind of get it to that point is just a lot, to put it simply. But it's like, you know, a good athlete or a good sports person, they just make something look so simple.
Yes.
And packaging's kind of a bit of a stretch to say it's like a sports person, but it's true. The reason we stuck with those sachets, even though there's been times where it would have been so much easier to put it in any other form of packaging, was simply because we knew that it would make, like, Shilajit resin's not easy to administer. So we just knew it would make our customers' lives so much easier and save them time if they could just snap something and in 5 seconds it's in their drink and they can drink it.
Yes.
Which is a huge thing for Shilajit. It's actually one of the reasons why it hasn't been that popular, because it's really popular in the East. It's been medicine there for thousands of years, but it's just so cumbersome to work with and it tastes pretty average. So they were the two big things that we spent so much time researching and working on, was improving the flavour and putting it in a single dose sachet that people, again, it was just simple and easy to use, so that they would use it, basically.
I feel like there's so much alpha to be gained in these like small little improvements that no one else is willing to do. And I'm not trying to diminish the sachet, because it's not a small little improvement. It's massive, but just this mindset of like, I could just kind of compromise on this and coast and get the job done. But like, you know, in your heart and soul, if there's a deeper level to tap into. I even think about it sometimes, like when I answer customer service tickets with Noble, where sometimes I'll write out a response where someone's asking like a really detailed question about the ingredients, and I'll give like the canned response that's quick. It takes me a minute to write it. And I've actually been stopping myself recently and being like, no, like every opportunity that someone is conversing with us and asking a question, it's an opportunity to win a lifetime customer potentially. And then I'll go back and I'll, you know, spend 10 minutes on a great response. And a lot of times they'll end up being really appreciative and they'll end up purchasing the product on subscription and being some of our most loyal customers. But that reminded me of what you were saying, like knowing that there's this vision of like a deeper level that you can tap into, but not compromising on that at all, even if it's more difficult, like actually like turning that thing into reality.
And I love what you said about customer service. Customer service questions are probably my favorite. And it's super interesting to me because I've literally thought about this product and these ingredients for tens of thousands of hours. However, it still changes. Like my responses and answers still change depending on the question, and new things will come up. So it's actually like a great opportunity for education as well as like improvement on the brand and the product. So
yes,
those responses that come from customers are super valuable for a brand and super valuable for founders to still have access to. Yeah.
I set up our customer service through Gorgeous and the tickets, and it's been an incredible experience. Yeah, and we often dive in, we still dive in like all the time on those customer service questions, and it's really important. We still dive into our social media account as well, and we're pretty much on it every day in the sense of like looking at some of the questions that are coming through and answering questions. And yeah, some of those questions that come through are great. And then like Dave said, like we're in our our Shopify account, you know, looking at the orders coming through every day and commenting, oh, look, they've come from here, they've come from there. It's crazy. It blows my mind every day, like when all this is happening. It's such a mind boggle for me, but the customer servicing is really important. When you're talking about that, I was just going, oh yeah,
yeah.
We do that often as like answering back to customers, and it's great sometimes people reaching out where you've been on a podcast or you've done something and they reach out and they tell their part of the story, and it's really, you know, inspiring for me to see that as well too. Like that feedback is really, really important too, because it's the only way you're going to learn.
The other thing we do with customer service is the customer service email that we have, everyone sees it. And when Brad or I or someone else replies to it, we reply all. So everyone sees the reply. So it's almost like an educational component for new people coming in as well.
I love that.
They'll see how we answer the question and why we answer the question that way. So yeah, customer service is great.
It really is just a great way to keep your finger on the pulse, right?
Yeah.
Because you pick up on these themes. You know, for us, there was like the first formulation of the product, there was a particular ingredient that customers had a lot of questions about, and they were continuing to send in tickets. And we're like, all right, well, if we're continuing to see this theme and they don't know what it is, we should figure out a way to really educate it and make sure that they know what it is on the website too. And so it just forces you to like get that pattern recognition and then make those changes.
Yeah, well said.
So obviously, you know, we were fortunate where we were able to raise some capital last summer, which really helped us scale things from a paid ad perspective, a marketing perspective, et cetera. But like, I would say for the first 100K of revenue, it was kind of guerrilla style of just like DMing people, getting affiliates, going on podcasts, et cetera. If you were talking to a founder that is completely bootstrapped and they don't have the luxury of being able to raise capital, do you guys have any recommendations or of things that you could do from like a sales and marketing perspective to really get the brand out there to generate sales, like without paid advertisements?
Without paid advertisement, yeah, definitely that influencer marketing is really important. Definitely. And making sure, for us, it's been really simple in a way because it's always been like mission and brand and relationship aligned with our influencers. And we've been super lucky with the influencers that we've dealt with, and your Ben Greenfields and your Eric Hymans. And I had a list of 100, I think it's called the Dream 100. I think it was by the guy that did the ClickFunnels. What's his name? I can't remember his name. You know, the guy I'm talking about, young guy.
Yeah.
And I just went.
Branson.
Yeah.
Branson,
yeah. Russell Branson.
Yeah.
Shout out Russell. Yeah, I just made a list of all the people that I'd been following for like 5 to 10 years, right? That I was inspired by, that I thought the product would align to, and I just reached out. I was just reaching out to all these people, and we found a lady, Erin Smith. She'll be listening.
She's great.
Yeah, she's
amazing.
Do you know Erin?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she's an she crushes it. She'll know what I mean by that too. So we got introduced to her by one of our team members, and basically I was sitting in a hotel with a packet of chips and $0 in the bank and $1 million worth of stock. So we just went, oh my gosh, we got to do something. And then I got introduced to Erin, got her a heap of samples, like a seeding list. She introduced us to Josh Trent from Wellness Force, Wellness Wisdom, and then on to our paid team in Austin. So yeah, that's basically create a seeding list of influencers that you feel will align with your brand, and then just go on that journey. Yes. And I feel like having, 100 to 200 units of product to send out to these influencers that you want to work with, and see how you're going to be brand aligned, and then just constantly just go through that, and then you'll get in front of the right people. If you've got like all that intention on the most incredible product you can build, and I always say, like, focus on building the best product you can with the intention, and then get it to the people that need to get it to, and then you'll have that perfect relationship. And then you can just do whatever you want after that. And you can obviously go down the paid route after that. But I would think make of a list of 100 people, seed your product to those 100 people, and then you'll get a certain percentage that will love what you're doing and love your message. And then, just go for it.
It's such great advice. Like, these influencers can really champion your brand in a way that is so far outside of the way that you guys even communicate about your product. Like, they find their own unique perspective on it, love the results they're getting with it, and then they're able to bring a whole new audience and voice to what you guys have built. So I love that. I'm curious, how far do you guys look into the future, like with the product and everything? Like, where's your guys' gaze?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've just completed like the vision for a product suite. So we've just had one product in the market for the last 12 months, MANNA, and now we've just put another 3 products into the market. So 2 are in the market, 1 comes in on the 21st of June, and that's our complete suite of 4 products. So from a supply side, that feels incredible. And then we've got a fairly tight sales strategy for 2024. And then, I've said to Brad and the rest of the team, like, the sales strategy for 2025 can just totally open up. So I guess we do things like 6 months or 12 months at a time. It's a fairly loose vision, as far as, when I say a loose vision, like, I'll think about it every day. However, I don't want it to be a bottleneck or if someone comes in with a good idea, Brad or anybody from the rest of the team comes in and says, should we look at this? Should we do this? Should we do that? Then we'll look at it, and if it feels right, we'll entertain it. The main reason that I've got that vision that I can see is literally because of the limitation of our supply. So for us to grow to the point that we'll get to by November, that's as much as we can handle from a supply perspective.
Got it.
With us using our revenue to put back into more supply, because our product costs us about 30% of our revenue, which is super high.
Yeah.
So we have to manage all of that. We don't get any additional investment. That's just managing from a revenue perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I get really excited with the sales and marketing side, right? Because that influencer side,
Yes.
you know, that marketing side's, we say it's like really alluring and fun. And then we've got our supplier side. So really, and I've always got, because Dave and I are co-founders and partners, like we've got one CEO, and you've got to be really careful that you're not both making decisions like CEOs. You've got one CEO, you know, one leadership port. It's really important. I find with a lot of co-founders that I see that there's a confusion of like the vision sometimes. Be really clear on what your vision and who holds that vision and who makes the final decision, because that can then drive the ship in momentum in the way it needs to go. It's really, really important. But yeah, for me, from a vision point of view and like looking far out there, I feel like we've got an incredible suite of products now, with the Ocean being like a hyper electrolyte product, which is incredible. We've got a Shilajit product out on its own because that's what the audience wanted. And then we've got MANNA Gold, which is like the pinnacle of what we've got. So from a suite, I couldn't be happier. It's incredible. So yeah, it's just making sure that we've got our stock right so that we've got our subscribers looked after, and then we can then grow in our business in 2025 and go where we feel is the right place to go. Because we don't want to grow it to a point where it's just out of control. I think just letting it grow organically is really, really important.
Yes.
Because it's still a project and we still want to be able to be inspired. The moment it starts owning you in a way, that inspiration for me, I can talk for me, that inspiration starts to wane. It's just like, yeah, I still want to have that wonder and awe, as my partner says, you know,
Yes.
is like have that wonder and awe about, you know, that childlike attitude to waking up every day is really important for me.
Yeah, it is. We don't want to grow it too much faster than it's already growing, to be honest, because of exactly what Brad said. Like, you know, we're here, we're with you guys. Before this, we're with other people actually sitting, developing relationship, right? Like that's what we love to do. Before we came to Austin, we're in Minneapolis manufacturing. We're visiting the manufacturer of our boxes, our designers. We were actually manufacturing the product. We were co-packing the product. The boxes that we gave you today of the new gold product, we were putting the sachets in those. So we still love doing all of that. If we grow too fast, my sense is that we will lose touch with a lot of those components, and it'll become more like work. It'll become more like a job. And that's where I think Brad and I are quite keen to, I don't know if protect it's the right word, but just within our own way, keep enjoying the process. To answer your original question more specifically, it's like, I don't actually have a vision beyond 2024 because I want to see where we are at the end of this year and recreate the vision for next year without having any limitations. So being able to kind of just concentrate on the vision for this year so acutely that it manifests perfectly, and then next year recreate that vision from a fresh space, because that's part of that fun as well. So yeah, I don't know. Keeping it fun, keeping all of that feedback coming in from Brad and the rest of the team, because we've got an incredible team now, and they're all beautiful people. They're coming from that deep space, and they're seeing a lot of things that that we won't be able to see as well. So listening to their ears and eyes from the field is really powerful.
It's very smart and contrarian advice in today's day and age of like being intentional of knowing, hey, I have the most fun and do the best work when I have that like childlike awe and wonder. And most people would just think, oh, I need to just grow revenue as much as possible. But to your point, if you become a slave to the business, number one, you're not going to have fun, and you probably won't even be as effective or productive because the business is just controlling you.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone really talks about that. So I love that you guys said that. That's actually good inspiration for us as well. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to learn more about what you've both got going on, MANNA, etc.?
Yeah, just on the, if you just go to the website, mannavitality.com, MANNA Vitality for Instagram. Yeah, that's where you can get us.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for making the time to do this. I think both Harry and I we had this anticipation that the conversation was going to be really, really good. And I think you blew our expectations out of the water. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for the commitment to excellence and the quality and the mission that you guys have too. I think the world just needs more brands like you guys. So thank you for leading from the front, and just excited to see where the relationship and the friendship goes from here.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Yeah, I'd just like to say this has been an incredible podcast for us because it gives us the opportunity to really like sit in it with other co-founders and really dive into some really inspiring parts of the journey too. So thank you for what you guys are doing too. It's really, really important, and we deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of the information that you guys kind of brought up, I don't think we've shared it before.
Yeah, 100%.
And I can really feel the energy and the brotherhood from the two of you as well. I'm super excited and inspired with what you guys are doing and with what you're creating. And you've got much more of a network effect than what we've got because you guys are starting much earlier. So yeah, congratulations on everything you're doing. Thanks so much for today, and looking forward to working together to create heaps of magic.
Yeah. Maybe a noble MANNA shake here in the future.
100%.
Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.